I know we're not supposed to overreact to spring training games, but Francisco Alvarez was so awesome on Thursday night. I think that's exactly what I'm about to do.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Now, when it comes to spring training games, I'm always here to tell you that you take the results with a grain of salt. Yet, with that said, when you watch Francisco Alvarez on a Thursday night in Clover Park dominate in the way that he did, it is hard not to get excited. It is hard not to dream of this kid finding his way to becoming one of, if not the best catcher in baseball and being the future face of the franchise. And I know that is a lot of expectations to take from one game and a spring training game against the Nationals nonetheless. But it's just a building feeling I have in my gut from watching him play last year and watching how this kid improves year over year. Last season, he hit 25 home runs, and that was amazing to see. Just sheer raw power on display. But what I took away from last season was not just the 25 home runs. It was the fact that here was a kid who was never necessarily regarded as a great defensive catcher as a prospect, who somehow became a great defensive catcher in his rookie season. A guy that commanded a veteran pitching staff who, graded out amazingly when it came to pitch framing. Francisco Alvarez last year did a lot well behind the dish. And he showed a lot of growth. And you watch these videos throughout the offseason, and sure, these are videos that he's posting to Instagram. They could mean nothing. But it certainly looks like a guy that puts everything he has into this. And I've always mentioned this, but I like to bring it up a lot. He's got the best tattooed on his neck in red ink, right across his throat, the best. Certain mindset that it takes to have that tattoo, and I think there's a certain level that he's trying to get to. And if you looked at his game last year, where were the areas that you could say he needed to improve? Obviously, the consistency offensively, hitting for a higher average, drawing more walks that are in line with what he did in his minor league career, maybe cutting down the strikeouts a little bit. All of those things are fair. But things that he could tangibly work on beyond the bat, it was throwing out runners. And he didn't throw out anyone with blazing speed in this game. He didn't throw out Ronald Acuna Jr. or Corbin Carroll. But Francisco Alvarez gunned down 3 runners in this game. And the way he did it, it shows work of an offseason paying dividends. What I mean by that is you watch his pop time on 3 very different throws. And you just watch the mechanics of the way he got into his throwing position. And that is nothing but repetition, turning into, in the game time moment, realization of all of that repetition. And he delivered 3 great throws to gun down 3 runners. And I want to start off in the first inning. So Lane Thomas hits a leadoff single. Last year, he stole 20 bases in 25 attempts. So he's not an unbelievable base stealer, but he does swipe a bag or 2. So he tries to steal second. Francisco Alvarez guns him down. If you look at the play, no wasted motion from Alvarez. He's down on his left knee. Okay, there's a lefty in the box. So he's on that left knee to be able to give a good target to Jose Quintana. When he sees the runner go, he plants his back leg. And in one quick motion, he takes that knee from the ground right up to a throwing motion. He's square to second base. His arm's exactly where you want it to be, and he delivers an absolute strike, not just to Francisco Lindor's chest. No, right into where the runner's trying to slide, right in front of the base. It's exactly where you want to throw. It's a perfect throw. Gets that runner out. Now, the other two throws were not quite as impressive, but they become a lot more impressive when you realize who was on the mound. Because last year, what was it? One caught stealing, if that, for Adam Ottavino the entire year. And that might have been 2022. He doesn't catch anybody. He is a green light for every opposing team when they're on first base. Second base, you got it. But Francisco Alvarez in that inning threw out 2 base runners. The first one, there's a righty in the box who is more down on his right knee, but the guy has a huge lead, okay? And so he knows this guy's going. As soon as he takes off, the ball's not even out of Adam Ottavino's hands, and Alvarez is already getting into his throwing motion, right? He catches the ball, which was outside, and again, he's already up, so he's right back into that same square set where he's able to just deliver a strike. It's chest high to Joey Wendell, who makes the quick tag and is able to get the runner. Another just great throw. Then again, in that fourth inning, you have a left-handed batter now against Adam Ottavino, and he throws a changeup. Now, Alvarez is set up low and outside for that changeup. He's down on one knee. He's got his left leg outstretched. He's down on his right knee. He's waiting for that pitch, low and outside the lefty, and the guy takes off. And he receives the pitch, which was, again, low and outside, right where, Ottavino was supposed to throw it, a changeup again, and hops back up, even from that awkward position, gets right in that exact same square throwing motion, shoulders square to second base, delivers a perfect strike. Granted, I think it was, who was it? It was the guy for the Nationals that has not amounted to what he was supposed to, the third baseman, Carter Kieboom. Name was escaped me for a second there. Kieboom actually did beat the throw initially, but he dove past the bag. But it was a bang play. Even though he should have been safe if he just held on to the bag, still the mechanics that Alvarez showed, just perfect. Again, 3 throws in a row. Last year, if you look at what Francisco Alvarez did well catching, as I mentioned, it was the framing. Okay, they now have run value if you go to Baseball Savant for everything. So there's run value for base running, for batting, for fielding. They're really getting this down to a science where you can look at every component of a player's game and find out how valuable they truly are. So when it comes to Francisco Alvarez's fielding, again, he was very valuable. 7 fielding runs of value. 9 of those came from his framing. None of them came from his blocking. He was league average at blocking. -2 came from stealing. So from guys stealing against him. His pop time was solid, 1.94. I bet that goes up this year, or down, I should say. I bet you that pop time gets closer to 1.9 flat, if not to that special territory of under 1.9. But that pop time was 27th in baseball. It wasn't bad. Runners were successful, though, in 59 of their 67 stolen base attempts last year against Francisco Alvarez. It's a caught stealing percentage of just 12%. For context, the best in the league, Gabby Moreno last season, who is very much a peer of Francisco Alvarez's, another guy that was a rookie catcher last year, who stood out in a big way, was catching for the team that went to the World Series in Arizona. He caught 48% of the base stealers that attempted against him last year, almost half. When you have that level of a weapon behind the plate, it really does help your pitching staff. And I'm not saying that all of a sudden Francisco Alvarez is going to be Gabby Moreno behind the dish, because that is a tall ask. But can he gun down a quarter of the runners that try to steal him this year? I think he can. Can he be valuable with his arm behind the dish this year? I think so. And to identify that skill that he had to work on this offseason, you see Francisco Alvarez in the gym getting in a catcher squat with these huge medicine balls and launching them. Going from a full squat, jumping out and launching them. That type of repetition, I'm sure countless throws on whatever field he was training at, working on getting his footwork in place. It's that work ethic that this kid has that makes me think he's going to be something really, really special. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit more in the next segment. Looking at the other top catchers in the league, how high he can climb, and really when it comes to the Mets, how much his impact could change their season this year. So we're going to go through that in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Factor Meals. This year, one of my big goals was to cut down on the amount of takeout that I was getting and just eat a little bit healthier. And Factor has been a huge help for me to do just that because they have delicious, ready-to-eat meals that are fresh, never frozen, chef curated, and dietitian approved that are ready to go in 2 minutes. So it just makes my life so much easier. At the beginning of the week, you have 35 different options to choose from so you can make your decisions, whether you're looking at a calorie smart diet, a protein plus diet, a keto diet. You can get after those goals. There's no prep, no mess. It's so easy, flexible to your schedule. You can get as much or as little as you need by choosing your meals every week. So if you want to cook a little bit, you don't have to have Factor for every single meal you eat. The plan is really, programmed to fit your lifestyle. Plus, you can pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. Sign up and save. And you know what? They've done the math. It's way cheaper than takeout. Okay. It's less expensive. Every meal, again, dietitian approved, nutritious, and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/lockedonMLB50 and you can use the code LOCKEDONMLB50 to get 50% off. That's code LOCKEDONMLB50 at factormeals.com/lockedonMLB50 to get 50% off. Try Factor Meals today. Now, when you listen to the opening of the show today, if you hadn't paid attention to the spring training game, and I talk about this monster game that Francisco Alvarez had on Thursday night, and then I just talk about him throwing out 3 base runners, you might have been a little bit confused why that was just the one thing I zeroed in on. He also hit a bomb of a home run, 408 feet, over 100 miles per hour off the bat. So far this spring, he is 3 for 12 with 2 home runs. So hitting 250, couple home runs in his early at-bats, not bad. But the thing that jumps out to me looking at Francisco Alvarez's spring stats is 4 walks. So in 16 plate appearances, he has walked 4 times. It's a quarter of those plate appearances. That's going to be another area of focus for him because throughout his minor league career, the walk rates were always over 10%. A lot of times they even got as high as 15%. Last year with the Mets, it was an 8% walk rate. If he can double that this year, and that might be asking a ton. So let's even just say, get that walk rate from 8% to 12%, right? All of a sudden you're adding, 15, 20 points to the on-base percentage, whatever it ends up calculating out to over a full season. If he hits for a little bit of a higher average, if he hits, 240 instead of around 200, and then he's walking more, all of a sudden he's getting on base at a better clip. And if the power is still there, which I'm sure it will be, you're going to look at a complete offensive player from a premium position defensively. This is why you can get really excited about Francisco Alvarez. And I'm not just talking about the home run on Thursday night, the spring stats, because look, as awesome as that home run looked, as much as he pimped it for the home crowd that was watching the night game, it was an 85 mile per hour fastball, it looked like, or whatever it was. The pitch came in straight. It was, dead central. It was kind of up in the zone, but just on a tee for Alvarez to just, golf it and drive it out to left field. The home run itself wasn't impressive to me, but it was impressive to see his strength, but I'm not saying, oh, wow, man, he hit 85 out. I didn't think he could do that. But instead, to me, it's just the complete game that he had under the context of a night game that had a little bit of a different buzz to it. It's not quite a regular season game, but it feels a little bit more intense or a little more, fan focus on the game when it's on TV for SNY. It's at night. It's not a day game. I just feel like Alvarez got up a little bit for this one. And that's what I think is different about him than the other guys we've seen who have just made, their debut this past year or their first full season this past year. They all obviously debuted in 2022, but the difference between Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, and Mark Vientos is Alvarez seems to get up for the moment. And I'm not saying that this was a moment to get up for a spring training game, but if you were watching it, there was a little bit more buzz than the games that start at 1 o'clock on a weekday. For Alvarez, to see the way that he hit that home run and the way he trotted around the bases and just everything we saw last year, of course, on top of this one game. The dude just has superstar potential and it's undeniable. That's really what it comes down to. And at justbaseball.com, we rank each position a top 10 list before the season. So I just want to go through what our rankings were this past year at catcher. Might have done this on the show earlier, but still, it bears repeating. We had Adley Rutschman, number 1, catcher of the Baltimore Orioles. Will Smith of the Dodgers, number 2. William Contreras coming off his breakout season with the Brewers, number 3. Cal Raleigh, who has been the best source of power from a catcher, and he's also really good defensively for the Mariners. We had him, number 4. Sean Murphy for the Braves, number 5. JT Realmuto, number 6. Jonah Heim for the Rangers, number 7. Gabby Moreno, number 8. Francisco Alvarez, number 9. The first 8 catchers on that list all came from winning teams. And outside of Cal Raleigh, all of them were in the playoffs last year. Catching matters. And Francisco Alvarez has the chance to impact the game more than pretty much anybody on the field outside of maybe Francisco Lindor playing shortstop. But Alvarez is in every play. He's calling every pitch. And I just trust that level of talent in that role to bear fruit over the years, because I think he's only going to get better at calling games. He's already showing, and again, it's one spring game, but I do think the mechanics are better than what we saw last year to see that improvement in the running game. He was great at framing pitches last year, and I don't think he's going to get lazy in that department all of a sudden in year 2. And I believe we're going to see more plate discipline from him this year, and he's going to be better offensively. I think he can jump way up on this list. Gabby Moreno has a really high floor, but he's not going to hit 40 pumps. Jonah Heim, really nice season. Same thing can be said about Sean Murphy and William Contreras. I think Francisco Alvarez has a higher ceiling than all of those guys. And, you look at Cal Raleigh, really good catcher, a guy that's put up some nice seasons. Maybe he does stay at this level for a long time, and maybe he is better than Francisco Alvarez. But you're looking at the league right now, the only catchers that I don't think Alvarez can be better than this year is Adley Rutschman and Will Smith. I think he can be a top 3 catcher in baseball if everything breaks his way. I'm not saying he absolutely reaches that ceiling in year 2, but it's coming, and it's coming fast. And he's still, 22 years old? So by the time he's 25, do I think it's crazy to, I wouldn't say expect, but to think it's possible that Francisco Alvarez is, if not the best catcher in baseball, the best catcher not named Adley Rutschman? I do think that he could put it all together in that way. And even this season, if Francisco Alvarez is able to get behind the dish for 120 games and DH for 35 games and stay on the field and stay in the lineup, is that productive with a bat that it warrants those DH opportunities. And he can hit 40 home runs while being a really good defensive catcher. That's going to help the Mets in the win column a whole lot. Last thing on him, this week he was on the Foul Territory podcast and did the interview in English, which is another impressive thing that this guy's worked as hard at his English as his game, that he is fielding interviews in his second language now, which is really impressive. But they were talking about Mike Piazza and the franchise record for home runs. They found that, it's 40 home runs. Alvarez, without a pause or a thought, just quickly says, all right, I'll hit 41 this year. The confidence that he has is through the roof. And I think that the Mets are in great hands moving forward as a franchise with their 2 Franciscos, with Lindor at shortstop and Alvarez behind the dish. I'm excited to see what he does in his second full season, because I think he's going to put up an all-star campaign. I really think he's going to be just money for the Mets this year. I think by the end of the season, Francisco Alvarez is going to be right there with Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo as a cornerstone of this franchise is building around, who should be giving you well above average production for years to come. And that's an exciting thing to think about. Anyway, I got some other news and notes from the Grapefruit League game and other stuff happening in Mets camp. We'll get to all of it in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon's Fire TV channels. Fire TV offers an amazing viewing experience with smart TVs as well as their Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides you access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV. I know personally, I love taking my Fire TV stick on the road. So I have the same viewing experience from my living room and I could bring it to my hotel room, which is really awesome. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels, deliver a constant supply of the latest video from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports between March Madness, the NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider so you're plugged into all the latest throughout the 2024 season. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime some news breaks on the Mets. It's also where you'll get lineups sent to your phone every day. So you'll get the starting nine texted directly to you. It's also where you can ask me questions anytime and where you can submit your entries to be part of our Locked On Mets giveaways. If you want to be part of all this bonus Locked On Mets coverage, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/lockedonmets. Jose Quintana looked great in his start on Thursday. Allowed 4 hits, but all were singles. He hit a batter, but did not walk any and struck out 6. It's awesome to watch this dude just attack. The way he can throw 92 up in the zone and get swing and miss. It shouldn't be as tough to hit, but that fastball always seems to just get on guys. I think it's just based on the angle that he throws from, the motion that he has. It just sort of is kind of a slow, easy, and then he just wham, just fires it in on you. And he really does just attack the zone, which is always refreshing to see from a starting pitcher. I think at times we look at this rotation and it's so underwhelming as a whole that you start discounting the individual guys. But Quintana's a good pitcher. You're going to enjoy watching him pitch every 5th day. And I think he's a really integral part of this team. Bill Ladson wrote a nice article about him on MLB.com. I had quotes from Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Alvarez, and I think some others too. But they were talking about how he's this calm-natured, quiet guy in the clubhouse, just a leader who's very friendly, approachable, all that good stuff. And then he gets on the mound and that flip is switched and he just is that bulldog, that fiery competitor. It's awesome to see him be able to do both for this team, to be able to really gear up and to mentor. Very similar to what I think we saw from Max Scherzer the last couple of years. And that's needed on this team. I mean, look at this rotation. Yes, Luis Severino and Sean Manaea and even Adrian Hauser have a good amount of big league experience, but I don't think they have the pedigree as a Quintana does. And so having him as the leader of this rotation, particularly early on, and even when Kodai Senga comes back, I mean, he's only in his 2nd year in the States. Even though he's the absolute ace on this team, you need someone like Quintana, and that's why I think he should and probably will start on opening day. He's in line for it. 54 pitches in this game, 32 strikes, which I might have already said, but again, just the pitch count's important there. He has 3 more starts this spring, based on the math I just did looking over the calendar. It's plenty of time to get stretched out to a full workload based on the days off and everything. If he was to pitch every 5th day, which I don't know if he'll do that in spring, but I think I would get to the point where he would have 3 starts and then have, I believe it was 5 or 6 days of rest before opening day. So however they stagger some extra rest in there, they can easily get him in line to be that first starter. And I think he should be, because I don't know who else would deserve it. Tyler McGill has an opening day start out of necessity in the past, but you want that start to go to a pitcher with some seniority who is returning a lot of times too, unless it's a huge offseason addition. I guess you can make an argument, hey, throw Severino out there, but I think Quintana as the leader of that rotation right now should get the nod. And like I said, I think he will. Other guys who pitched in the game, Adam Ottavino, 1 scoreless inning with a lot of help from Francisco Alvarez. Again, he gunned down 2 runners that Ottavino had led on. And Ottavino did get a strikeout for the other out, but a good inning, I guess. Maybe he's a little bit quicker to the plate. It didn't quite seem like it, though. Jake Diekman allowed a hit, but pitched a scoreless inning. Jorge Lopez, Shintaro Fujinami, and Josh Walker all retired the side in order in their respective innings. Josh Walker had 2 strikeouts. Fujinami, was his first appearance in a Mets uniform, only threw 10 pitches to get through that inning. Very easy stuff. He said after the game, I think he touched 94, so I could have thrown a lot harder if I tried to, but just easing himself back in. It's going to be interesting to see what the Mets do with Fujinami because they have the options. They could put him in the minor leagues to start the season, let him prove that he can throw strikes because the stuff is absolutely there. He just has to harness it and control it and throw it over the plate. Or they might just say, man, the impact that he can have from day one is just too great. He can be lights out. He could be the 8th inning guy on this team. And they might just put him on the opening day roster. So we'll see how many more appearances he gets over the next, 3 weeks here, if he can win a spot, but certainly looked solid in his first outing. Grant Hartwig pitched the final inning, gave up a single, but no runs, got the save. On the position player front, Joey Wendell got his first start of spring, so he is healthy, ready to go. Played 5 innings at second base, went 0 for 2 hitting. Harrison Bader started again, played 5 innings in the field, didn't get a second at bat. He would have hit after Wendell, I believe, but Wendell made the last out of the 5th inning. I guess they're not ready to let Bader play a 6th inning in the field, so only got the 1 at bat. I'm sure he's gotten plenty of at bats and live ABs on the backfield, so I don't think he was sweating too much to miss that second opportunity at the plate. Mark Vientos, 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. One of them against a lefty. Not a good night for Mark. Brett Beatty was it 1 for 2 with a walk, I believe. He struck out once and he had a bunt base hit. Actually, he didn't strike. You know what it was? He was 1 for 3. I apologize. I remember now. He had a strikeout. He lined out with an exit velocity of 105 off the bat. And then he had a bunt base hit. He was the runner on base that scored. Francisco Alvarez hit his home run. So far, Beatty and Vientos lead all Mets hitters with 21 at-bats in spring training. Neither is hitting above the Mendoza line. Each has 6 strikeouts. So early returns not great. JD Martinez is just sitting out there waiting to be signed. There's part of me that still understands letting the kids have the job. And there's another part of me that says, let the 2 of them fight for playing time at third base and just get the 100 RBI DH into your lineup and see how much that changes things and lengthens things throughout the season. I think they should do it when you consider the fact that if you pretty much just put like $15 million in front of JD Martinez with some incentives, I think he probably signs at this point. He's just out there. But maybe the Mets let this thing play out a couple more weeks to get even more of a discount, or they just really trust that these guys are going to perform this season. Now, I will note that Francisco Lindor is hitting 211 with 6 strikeouts, and he has not homered. So we can't read too much into Beatty and Vientos struggling. I'm not worried about Lindor, but these guys are supposed to be winning a job. They're supposed to have a sense of urgency. So when you see Vientos strike out 3 times in a game, it's hard not to notice it and point it out. Jeff McNeil will start taking swings on Saturday. He's dealing with that lingering issue with his non-throwing arm. Hopefully, he can get himself ramped up and be good to go for opening day. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's show. I know on yesterday's show, I promised a top prospects prediction show. Actually, that is reminds me. The Mets have their roster was announced here for the breakout game. So let me pull that up really quick. But I will say I will get to that top prospects prediction show. It's just Alvarez stood out so much in this game that I figured better to talk about it while the news was kind of fresh there. I got the roster up now for the spring breakout game. For those of you who aren't aware, it's March 15th, so a week from today, as you guys are listening to this or watching this. And it is a showcase of the top prospects in respective farm systems. They're going out throughout Arizona and Florida. For the Mets, they're playing the Nationals. And here's the roster for the game. Luis Angel Acuna, Jesus Baez, Colin Houck, William Lugo, Jacob Reimer, Jeremy Rodriguez, Junior Tillian, Marco Vargas, and Jet Williams. The outfielders, Ryan Clifford, Drew Gilbert, Nick Morabito, Alex Ramirez, and Rylan Thomas. The catchers, Ron Hernandez, Kevin Parada, Vincent Perozzo. The pitchers, Paul Gervais, Dominic Hamill, Daniel Juarez, Noel McLean, Wilkin Ramos, Ben Simon, Brandon Sproat, Tyler Stewart, Blade Tidwell, and Calvin Ziegler. Christian Scott and Mike Vassell were not on the roster. I'm assuming that's just, I don't know, part of however they're trying to ramp them up for the season, regardless, or who they thought would be in line to pitch in this game. But a lot of talented players there. We've talked about a handful of them in the last couple of Friday Farm Reports. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can find that playlist. See my top 10 for this year. Look at my just off the top 10 guys to look at coming up here that did not make my top 10 list, but could in the future. We talked about Hauk, Reamer, Baez, Vargas, a lot of these guys. So you can certainly find some more information on the top prospects in other places on this YouTube channel or in your podcast feed. But that's going to be all for me for this week on Locked On Mets. Be back on Monday. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. If you're listening on the audio side, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, head over to Locked On Sports Today, or your second watch on YouTube, which is the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything in the world of sports with our local experts on each team and our league-wide experts for each league. You can find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.